Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. Not even the turn of the year could kill off this show. Some call it a rating success. Success is arbitrary. Welcome back to season 2 of the Dodgy Punts, now Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. Trademark. I'm Jesse. That's Liam. It's great to have you back, Liam, for another year, another installment of this great podcast.
I know. I'm excited. I can't believe it's that time already. We're back again to talk footy for another year, which I'm very excited to do with you, Jesse. You know, we promised a few things across the off-season, a few YouTube videos. But listen, life gets in the way. I gave it a crack with one, which I thought was quite good. If you haven't watched it, go check out the history of all the different AFL theme songs. But I'll tell you what, Jesse, I have a newfound respect for a lot of editors out there because hot dog, that took me a long time to do. Way too long, and more time than I care to admit. But it was still a lot of fun to do. But outside of that, we're just happy to be back talking footy. Season 2025 is literally 10 days away, which is bananas, Jesse. Bananas.
Hey, Liam, what month of the year is it as well?
Well, currently it's February.
Yeah, and we're saying it's 10 days to the AFL season, which brings us on to my first point for this podcast. Is the season too long? Yes. Thank you. See you next year. It was great having season 2. Oh, my God. Why am I back here already? I complained about this last year and it's gotten worse.
Yeah, I know, and it's like it was your big bugbear that started last year. It hasn't got any better. I for one can say I'm not overly surprised, Jesse. You can't run with an idea for 1 year and then call it a day. No, this is the AFL. They have to see things through and just to completion, no matter what that means. But it's a big issue. It's a big issue which we'll talk about today a little bit because we're going to talk about some of the injuries that have come off the off-season because there are some big ones. There are some big ones. We're going to talk about the supplemental selection period and the little cheeky controversy around that happened today, day of recording, which is Monday. Talk about some of the off-season shenanigans that happened as well. Before next week, Jesse, we'll get into the actual season and start talking about some of the actual footy. Well, look, we can even jump in and talk about the Dockers versus All-Stars game if you want. Do you want to do that?
We can have a little natter about that and how revolutionary our game plan was that no Fremantle fan has ever seen before, despite seeing that game plan in some form for the last 13 years. That's not an issue.
Not an issue. It's fine. It was very vanilla football. That's what we like to see. Jesse, before we keep going on, I'm going to ask you to move that microphone just a smidge closer to your gob, my friend. People got to hear what you have to say.
People never tell me to talk more or louder. This is the first time for everything,
mate. It's just because you're the brains of this operation. I'm just here.
Deary me. We need some serious help then. I think if that's the case.
No, we'll be fine.
Well, if you want to see us ad-lib and fumble our way through the entire 2025 AFL season, you can follow us at CMPerfect_AFL on your preferred social media platform. And of course, if you want to watch us fumble through the whole season, much like Tom Sheridan in the 2015 preliminary final, you can jump on YouTube and check out Centimetre Perfect and AFL podcast, or you can just listen to us through your ears on your preferred podcasting platform. Lots of P's there. There's a P at the end of SSP. So let's talk about that first, because I think that's the biggest news story to come out of today, Liam, and today, of course, being Monday,
24th of February. That is correct, Jesse. So obviously the SSP is there just to kind of give the teams a little bit of an extra buffer, right? Things have gone wrong in training. You've lost a couple of players here and there. You got this little window to maybe get a couple of youngsters on your list, or maybe an older fella who's been delisted from somewhere else. Bring him back in. That's what the SSP period is for. Now, Jesse, I'm not sure about how you feel about this, but usually when you bring in something, a rule or a period like this, there's a time period, right? There's only a certain period of time that this runs until. But something very intriguing happened today. What happened, Jesse?
Well, the AFL have decided that time doesn't matter anymore and have extended the SSP in the wake of injuries affecting Carlton and Melbourne. My first thoughts on this is fantastic. I can't wait for Fremantle to never lose a game this season because we decide to extend the quarters until such time as we win. Now, does that mean when we're playing a good side, it's going to be a 4-week-long game until we eventually get over the top? Mm-hmm. Maybe. How's it going to work for the rest of the season? I don't know. But the point is now, time frames don't matter. And really, again, we're in February and I'm already saying nothing matters in the AFL, which is incredible because normally it takes until about round 3 or round 4 if you count opening round. So Carlton and Melbourne have injuries. That sucks. Now, obviously, more so for Jagger Smith, who is one of the most exciting prospects for the entire season. And I don't think anyone would have been happy to read that news that he's out for the season. He was going to get minutes for Carlton that look like this year. More than that, though, he's 18. It's a huge year for him as a human being, as a footballer. You know, for him professionally and personally, it's going to be a really difficult year for him. I have sympathy for Jagger Smith. To an extent, I have sympathy for the Carlton Football Club, and I'll extend this to Melbourne as well, because I think Smith's probably the bigger loss for the two clubs, but ultimately both clubs did suffer a last-minute long-term injury. However, the period had closed for SSP picks to be made. Mm-hmm. So without sounding callous, tough.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, that sucks. If it happened to Fremantle, tough. If it happened to any 18 of the 18 clubs in the AFL, tough. Or at least that's what I thought it would be. There's two ways you can look at this. Mm. Is the AFL saying, well, look, we've made a mistake here with the fixturing. We've crammed it all together. We didn't account for the SSP overlapping with the end of preseason, so we're going to change it to make sure that it basically does. If that's the case, that has merit, but you can't change it at this point in time. It's like if they do this every year with something, they just change the rule. Nothing irritates me more than the rules being changed as they go. We see it on field, we see it off field. It never ceases to amaze me. Like the academy, we saw this with the academy bidding system in last year's draft. Every club had probably 18 months to prepare. Right, these are our academy talents. We need roughly this many points derived from these draft picks to get this player. All of a sudden, no, everything's now completely different. This is probably a less impactful version of that, but it's still another example of make up the rules as we go, which I think is a concern for me.
Yeah, it's a curious one, because obviously I think, going back to what you say, if it was Fremantle that had this, they wouldn't have extended it. I can almost guarantee you that they would not have. And that goes out to the Suns, probably the Swans as well. Brisbane, maybe a little bit bigger. They might have a bit more stroke. But it's almost like saying you're in the trade period, you wave off your pick 82, and then by the day after go, oh, actually, I actually forgot that we actually want this other player. Can we just kick it on again? Just start it up. Just start it up. No stress. We'll get that player, and then we'll end it there. Is that cool? There's really no difference. Like, there's no difference to this kind of, like, there's a specific prescribed period. That's it. So it's hard to disagree with you, Jesse. Like, the period's there for a reason. Now, is this the first year they've done it?
Change the period? Yes. They've done SSP before. SSP's been around for a little while.
Okay, cool.
But this is the equivalent of saving exiting on a FIFA game until you get the right player that you want to join your EFL Championship side. And look, let's be honest here. Yeah. We've all tried to get Ronaldo to join Norwich. He would be a fantastic link-up player with Borja Sainz and Josh Sargent to get us out of the Championship again. But that's on my Xbox. And guess who else is affected by what happens on my Xbox? Nobody. So I can do that as much as I want. But for the AFL to do what is basically that, just in real life, which, and this is true, affects more than just the AFL, is a bit weird to me. It's a bit odd.
It is a bit strange. Did they open it? Do you know if they just opened it for today and just went, okay, tick, tick, and then that was it? Because
it's got a bit to run.
It's got a bit to run. So they've kind of gone, okay, we're just going to extend. And they have extended it, or they've never extended it before?
I don't believe they've extended it before.
It's curious. It's weird. It's very strange. It's almost like, it doesn't sound like there was the proper, like, Carlton, Melbourne have a whinge, and then AFL were like, okay, cool, we'll extend it.
Apparently the clubs were consulted, but...
Well, that's what I was going to say.
But I've also heard conflicting arguments that apparently some clubs aren't happy. So that implies there's different levels of communication going, or just no one knows the true story, which is entirely possible as well.
It's very entirely possible. But that seems to me like a unanimous decision kind of decision. Like, everyone has to be on board for that to be, kicked on. But interesting way to start. And like you said, it wouldn't be an AFL season without some sort of weird stuff going on, some sort of rule change. Why not get it cracking straight away? Before round one, before your favourite round of the year, opening round. Get it out of the way now. Let's hope nothing else happens, right? Nothing else is going to be controversial. because we got most of that out of the preseason as well, Jesse. Lots of club statements coming out in this offseason. Did you notice?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be a PR professional and take annual leave over the summer. Get a few phone calls while you're out partying up in Fiji or over in Europe to enjoy the winter or whatever you were doing because, oh no, someone's done something really naughty and we have to do a club statement now. Whoops.
Yeah.
Ruben, not there, mate. No, there's a bathroom down the way. No, not there. No, Ruben, no. Liam, get away from the police, mate. You too. You're not allowed there.
Oh God, they can't stay away from it. It's. I think the biggest one. Oh, as I get a frog in my throat. I reckon the biggest one, probably the biggest news story, given that it came with a 5-week suspension from the club, was probably Noah Bolter getting into a bit of an argy-bargy up in the border of Victoria and New South Wales. I don't know.
It gives real credence to the term border town, doesn't it? Because they often conjure up rough, lawless frontier towns, and Noah Bolter certainly went there and thought he might live out his Red Dead Redemption fantasy by getting into a good old-fashioned bar fight up there, allegedly, by the way, in case that's still before the courts, allegedly. The Centimetre Perfect legal team advises that's allegedly. Unless he's being charged, in this case, not allegedly, but if he hasn't been charged, allegedly.
Allegedly, that's right.
I don't think he hasn't been formally dealt with yet, so we will say allegedly for now. But the fact he's been suspended for 5 weeks because of the incident, that's fair game. Not great for a player that Richmond, who have just done a massive clean out, have invested a lot of time and money into keeping at the football club. A player they probably hope to build some of their younger leaders around in season 2025 and beyond. So, look, I mean, we all know that going out as a sports person of any kind does attract risk. You look at Sam Kerr in the United Kingdom. You see innumerable incidents around the globe with sports players sometimes being in the wrong, sometimes being goaded into being in the wrong. There's many different ways to skin a cat. People always want their 5 minutes of fame and, can and do stupid things in order to get that. So in no way defending Bolter's actions, but I guess the overall point here is these players are putting themselves in situations where they're going to be in a position. Now, this is an interesting point I actually want to kind of expand on, and I've kind of expanded on it in my head as I'm talking.
Cool.
20 years ago, AFL players were well paid, right? I don't think anyone would look at an AFL player 20 years ago even and say, you're broke, mate. But, there was probably more of a tie to normality, I guess, in terms of wage than what we have now. So, and we've seen that in many ways. Players are, I think, in general, a lot more professional off the field. They take their off seasons very seriously. They go to Doha to fix their hamstrings with some very, we'll call it cutting edge science to make all of that work. Very rarely seen out in the town anymore, those type of things. Is that a fair expectation in your view, Liam, for fans of the club? Because you see players now regularly tipping 7 figures or certainly high 6-figure salaries. Obviously, these are young men, and we are talking about the men's game here specifically. These are young men. Young men do like to, have mates, go out, have a drink. I don't think that's a controversial statement anyway, but
I wouldn't thought so, no.
As that wage bill increases for AFL clubs, is there more of an expectation in your view on players to then, I guess, dial it back and act, I guess, above reproach, for lack of a better term?
It's the age-old question when it comes to sports stars, celebrities in general, right? Like, how much of you do you have to water down outside of your job, right? Because it is a job. Like, and I think we've spoken about this last year a little bit as well. Like, if I was to go outside and do something absolutely absurd and that got back to my workplace, I'd probably be dealt with. That said, you got to have fun. You got to let your hair down in some capacity. And I think what you said before in relation to like having that spotlight on them, unfortunately means that you're going to have some people trying to make a name for themselves thinking that AFL are tough guys. Sam Taylor from the Giants seems like a lovely fella. He just looks like a lovely fella. You wouldn't want to go up to him in a bar and be like, oh, because he looks like a nice guy.
If he keeps ignoring my emails about my defensive plan for Fremantle, I might. And how he could fit in really well.
Don't get concussed. Rule 1.
I've been really busy this off-season.
Have you?
Lots of emails.
Who else have you emailed? Go on. Sidebar.
Sidebar, I've emailed... Well, there was a bit of hate mail too as well. So every player that's left Fremantle under acrimony circumstances in the last 5 years got a Christmas card.
Only 5?
Yeah, I feel like you sort of let it go at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
I've only been an adult for about 5 years, so I may as well. I got to draw the line somewhere, I feel like. Got to draw the line somewhere. I can't go and dig out the quill and send a carrier pigeon to Trent Crode, berating him.
Dear Trent Crode, I am very upset with your previous discretions. That was a really good old English accent. I don't care what anyone says. Sorry, Jesse, go on. Who else?
I'm glad you don't care because it was rubbish.
I know.
I've sent letters to every player you can think of, even ones you haven't heard of yet. I know. I've actually started recruiting. I'm going to build the ultimate Ross Lyon terrible team and recruit a defensive player from every sport in the world. And we're just going to defend because they've all got the defensive mentality.
Yeah.
So we're just going to drop back, defend, sort it out that way.
Who says scoring wins games? No. Just stop the other team. That's all you need to do. Done.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that team coming to the competition in the next few years. Jesse, do you reckon you get the? We need a 20th license for the AFL. So why not Jesse's team? What are you going to call them?
Well, I've got to put on a coast somewhere because you can't be fighting a war on two fronts. So that does rule out Alice Springs, unfortunately. They were on the short list, but they can't have it. Look, I think Cairns, because Cairns has got so stifling humidity that actually running forward for our opponents would be so tiring. They probably just give the ball to us anyway.
Yep.
So there you go. We have the I don't even know what to call them. I was going to call them the Taipads, but that's the NBL team, and I can't do that. It's not allowed.
Call them the Pineapples, the Cairns Pineapples.
Greater Eastern Cairns. There you go. Problem solved.
Very good. Very good. The GEC. Very good. Now, well, another person getting himself in hot water and subsequently losing their job, stepping down. Old mate Luke Sayers, the president of Carlton, thought he'd get a little bit risque, chucking some stuff on Twitter.
Well,
I refuse to call it the other thing.
Officially, he may have been hacked.
Officially, okay.
Now, as someone who has used Twitter more than 3 times in my life, do I personally, and again, cleared by the legal team, do I personally believe he was hacked? I have my doubts because you don't tweet like that. It's a weird hack, or it's got to be a very personal hack. So, an odd situation. But yes, he may have posted it. He may have been hacked. That's the point of my interjection here. We actually don't officially know.
Well, no, we don't. But what we do know is that he decided to step aside on the back of all that argy-bargy or that controversy. I wonder if this is the case of if he didn't do it, right? Once it's out in the public eye, the public court of opinion is obviously very strong, especially nowadays with social media. So he's going to be like, you know what? There's no point in me trying to argue this because no matter what I say, even if he was hacked, no matter what I say, people are going to be like,
look, his baby blue's out on the internet forever. That's going to be a hard one to draw back in. And I think at that point, it's just the right thing to do to step aside.
Da, 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 da. Very good. It is a very sexy song when you put it that way, is it not? Come on now. And the last thing we'll talk about before we get into the injury news, Jesse, unless there's anything else you want to bring up.
Just a couple of quick things to fly around with. First of all, Finn Callahan offered all the money in the world to go to Florida and taking none of it and just re-signing with the Giants the next day. That's quite fun.
They could have been throwing the checkbook around him. They try to get, was it Wangan and Miller to sign a long-term deal as well? Probably more likely given he's already there. But yeah, they've got quite a bit of a bankroll to play with, don't they, Jesse? Well,
Andy Brayshaw is 99.9% done staying at Fremantle, but there is still that level of question while he is not at the football, not re-signed beyond the year. So St Kilda will certainly be trying to stick their snout in the trough for that one.
The better bloody not.
Really, though, this probably isn't a great year for St Kilda's war chest, trademark war chest. We've already had an injury scare with Max King as well. It'll be interesting. Obviously, I don't think Chad Warner's going to deviate from his ultimate plan to end up in Western Australia, whichever club that may be. Mm-hmm. So it does add that extra layer of intrigue. Now, Saints cash-wise in their salary cap, would probably be the richest club in the league in terms of what they can pay a player. We've been here before. They've made some poor choices, overspent on players. Think like the Brad Hill deal as a prime example. Brad Hill is a good player. He's arguably a very good player. But he's not the player you throw 900 grand a year at. At that point in time, you probably do now. But at that point in time, I don't think that's a great investment. So big watch on the Saints and what they do throughout the contract circus this year. A couple more things to quickly touch on. Tim Kelly, during the off-season, admitted that he's fallen out of love with football in recent years, having been at the West Coast Eagles. Gee, I don't know if I'd want to hear that as a West Coast supporter. I mean, I know he's probably said the quiet part out loud for many players at struggling teams in recent years, and it's probably the case for some at North Melbourne, probably some at St Kilda. Mm-hmm. It's been a difficult period for West Coast, but when I think a decent amount of, not blame, because blame's not fair, but when a decent slice of the pie, the historical context pie, is taken up by Kelly's trade from Geelong as a reason why West Coast are struggling in terms of their ability to regenerate their list, I don't think you want to hear that.
No.
I really don't think you want to hear that.
We came over with a lot of fanfare and a lot of expectation, which I don't think he really fulfilled from the get-go. That's my take on it anyway. It was quite a lot of hype and probably didn't live up to it as much as what they thought. Now, that's going to take a toll on anyone's mental state as it is. And you've got to be a really mentally strong person to play any sort of professional sport, because you're going to get that criticism nonstop. And I can see how players would fall out of love with it. You know, you kind of want to be that player that's like Switter, right? Great player, but no one's ever going to be talking about him. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, we love him. He's fantastic. But you're never going to get the Herald Sun writing up an article about what he did on the weekend and which cappuccino he's having. You know, that's not there. It's not the Harley Reid treatment.
What if it had oat milk? That's newsworthy.
It is newsworthy because it's all the rage nowadays, and it's great. It's great. I don't mind it. Actually, I'm trying to get used to it because my old age, Jesse, my tummy doesn't handle the old milk much anymore.
the day I have to switch to oat milk is going to be a tragic day in my house. Not least somehow more tragic than being booted to the corner of my office by a Sausage Dog's toy bundle to record this episode, which is up there for an all-time low in my professional career. One last bit of around the ground stuff from me as well, Liam. No Saturday night football coverage on free-to-air for the opening stanza of the season. It is all on Kayo, which has had another price rise since we last spoke. Now, I complain about price rises and Kayo like a clock does strike midnight twice a day, but this is bad, isn't it? This is a really bad result, I think, for a lot of football fans.
Business, innit? I mean, I agree with you. Like, because not everyone, the amount of streaming services that are out there at the moment, sports, obviously Kayo's specifically for sports, but Kayo, Netflix, Stan, Binge,
Disney,
Amazon, Disney,
Paramount,
BritBox. How can we forget BritBox? You know, if I want to watch old seasons of The Office with Ricky Gervais, get me some BritBox.
You forgot Poirot. However you say it, I don't know. I'm not British.
Poirot.
That's the one. Poirot.
I did forget, and The Bill, of course. All on BritBox. You can catch that every Friday night, I'm sure, on BritBox. Actually, it's streaming. You can catch it whenever you want.
It's on demand. I would assume. It's also not an ad for BritBox, but if BritBox want to sponsor us, we should have to be up there for one of the weirdest sponsorships in history. You know where to find us. At CMPerfect_AFL on Instagram. Just to hammer this point home, I really don't like this. And yes, I'm not naive to the reasons as to why. I'm not an idiot. I was not born yesterday. But this does feel like another step in the wrong direction for, I'll call it fan accessibility to this, or supporter accessibility. Fan does feel a bit commercialized. Supporter accessibility to this game and to this league and to the teams that have made up this league.
Well, also not forgetting that KO, I'm pretty sure, also just pulled out a lot of regional Australia. So if they're not able to watch it at all, unless they've got some sort of deal that, GWN can still show it or the like. That means a lot of the rural towns are going to lose all their Saturday night footy entirely. It's like they've just pulled the pin. Not going there.
Too hard.
Too hard. And it encourages VPNs, which is they have to get VPN for somewhere else in Australia. It's just silly, Jesse. It's all very silly. But no, I mean, I see why they do it. I see the ads obviously on KO when I'm watching the NBA or the NBL. See the ads for the Saturday. John O'Brien in his best Elton John get up dancing on a piano. Everyone's excited for it, Jesse. It's crazy.
I'm not.
I know you're not. Well, listen, they've done the price hike, and everyone knows the trick, right? Threaten to leave, they'll chop your bill. Keep that in the back. Keep that in your back pocket. You can only do it like once or twice, though.
Gee, we are really flirting with the lawyers this week.
They do it. That's their choice. They don't have to do it. They offer it to people.
That is true.
Lawyers, please. We're suing you for saying something that we do.
I can't even spell lawyers. That's not true. I actually can.
LOR. Apparently they're still investigating old mate Petrarca's King's birthday injury from last year. They've gone back.
It's a bit of a reinvestigation, this one, just to figure out if there was any culpability there. I think it's just time to let sleeping dogs lie. I mean, allegedly, yes. Gee, you really do want to get us sued this week, don't you? Look,
first week back, Jesse. Let's just get it out of the system now. Hey? Get out of the system.
Is this your way of saying you don't want to do the podcast? You're going to slap enough libel lawsuits to not even get near episode 2 of season 2.
And listen, I've seen enough streakers running out into the field being slapped with a $50,000 fine, and guess what? They get away with it because they can't pay it. How about your lawyers? I ain't got nothing. Actually, you probably have more to lose. Damn it.
Stop it.
My apologies. I'm just excited, Jesse. I haven't done any podcasting.
You're buzzing. I can tell you're buzzing.
I'm buzzing. I'm loving it. Just calm me down. Just try and calm me down. But we'll let that sleeping dog lie. Fair enough, Jesse. We'll move on. Now, before we get into all the injury news leading into season 2025, a reminder. Our Just the Tips will be back as of round 0, opening round. And Jesse and I are going to be doing it a little bit differently. If you watched any of us last year doing this, we're not doing your boring old, tip 1 for, you get 1 point for each winner. No.
That's boring. We're changing the way tipping is done for the AFL. Will it work? Will it be a success? I think so. Jesse, what about you? I'm excited for a full season of confidence points. Even though I recall being unjustly robbed in the conclusion of last season.
So all your own fault.
No.
But yes, you were.
No, I was coerced. And now I'm being falsely accused. Maybe I'll shut down this podcast. I'll get lawyers involved. No, in all seriousness, I'm quite excited. I think it's a good way to do it. I think it really allows, I know there's only 2 of us, but it allows us to sort the wheat from the chaff between us as well. Like, I mean, realistically, I should be 80 points ahead by round 10 and just not look back. And in that way, it's a fun competition for me. And you have to deal with me being insufferable for that 15-minute segment for the next 15 weeks of the season, because it's a 25-week season now, and I'll extend it into finals, so you have to deal with it for 29.
I'll get to round 7 already. Be putting 9 confidence points on North to beat Geelong because I'll have no other choice.
And you know what? That'll win too. Because of course it will.
So give a brief rundown on confidence points. I'm thinking we should rename them something. We'll work on that. We'll workshop the idea of the confidence points. We can keep that as well. But give the listeners a lovely little rundown of what a confidence point is.
So this comes from the Going In Raw podcast, which I believe Steve Larson hosts, Liam. Correct me if I'm wrong, in the wrestling space.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very important to clarify when you say the Going In Raw podcast that it is a wrestling podcast. But yes, Stephen Larson.
Professional wrestling.
Yes, not mud.
They wear clothes.
They do. They do. Yes, continue.
Sorry, you really put me off there. So...
Are you going to explain the points or no? Oh, you're coming back. You're trying to compose yourself. Come on.
I'm trying to compose myself. Jesus H. Christ. So, confidence points are awarded based on a tipster's thoughts of the week. So, 1 to 9 in a full week of AFL, full complement of AFL teams playing a season. You awarded 1 point to the team you are least confident in winning, but should still get the job done in your eyes. 9 points to the team that you're just about declaring a certainty. Think Winks in any of her late career starts. You get your points based on that. You lose, you're potentially giving up a fairly big margin. If it's a big, you can get a swing as high as 18 points in a confidence point game if there's just a massive difference of opinion and or someone is desperate to get some points back on the scoreboard.
That's right. And I think if we're talking about, maybe getting this going in its own little competition, own little tipping thing this year, but again, life got in the way in this off season. That's fine. But if people like it, get enough interest, maybe we'll fire something up for season 2026. I'm excited for it, Jesse. It's going to be fun, and we'll get onto the first episode of that next week. Okay. Now, let's do a quick rundown, hey? All the injury news in the offseason. We're not going to go through every single team and every single player because, honestly, who has the time? So what we're going to do is run through some of the key highlights of the injuries, have a bit of a chat. Jesse's going to give his expert analysis like he always does, and then we'll just build on it from there, Jesse. So are you ready? Are you ready, sir?
I am.
Hell yeah. All right, we'll start in alphabetical order, shall we? Does that sound good to you?
That seems reasonable.
Adelaide. Only real thing coming out of Adelaide this offseason was Kieran Strachan. How do you say that? Kieran Strachan. I'm not too sure. I don't think he's one of the ruckmen, one of the lesser used ruckmen, I believe. On the long-term injury list, has been sidelined for the season. SSP replacement coming in. And look, if that's all you're talking about when it comes to major injuries, I think you might be doing okay. So let's move on. Adelaide done and dusted. There are going to be great. How was your analysis on that one, Jesse? Your thoughts?
Can we play you every week?
Brisbane. Okay, a few here. So incoming Tom Doody. Yeah. And Caden Coleman, still unclear for return dates for those ones. And a litany of the injured stars, Hipwood, Lloyd, McCarthy, McCluggage, all fighting for round one returns. And the base model for the Nintendo Mii, Levi Ashcroft. Have you seen his face? It is just the most regular face in history. He's also a little banged
nice
up.
Shot.
Does he though? I was looking at his face in his picture when he's smiling with old mate, what's the coach's name? This is me through the season. If this is your first time listening to the Centimeter Perfect podcast, I will do this a lot. I will forget names of the most important people in the game.
We should keep track of that this season. That's one.
That's one. Okay, the forgetful counter. Chris Fagan, and he's just like this, just a really. It doesn't matter. But he's also banged up and might be challenging for round one. Assuming he plays, he's still a rookie. Do you reckon he'll get up for round one in a premiership team, Jesse?
I don't think they'll take chances. If there was a couple of other, I guess, suitable injuries for him and he wasn't in that conversation, then potentially, yeah. But I wouldn't take the risk if I'm Chris Fagan. I've got enough players. I've got confidence in the players that got me where I needed to be last year. I don't need to rush at admittedly very exciting talent straight into the team and risk more injury.
Yep, and that's fair too. I mean, if you look at their actual injury list, it's quite extensive, but by the looks of it, it's mostly early season, preseason stuff. So hopefully nothing too bad. Brandon Starcevich is on there as well. And how could you forget Shadow Brain? He's also on the injury list. But I think the defending champions should be okay. They should be okay, shouldn't they? All right, the special gang, Carlton, the ones we changed the rules for. Nick Newman and obviously Jagger Smith for the in the off season, out for the season for those two fellas. Unfortunately, Charlie Curnow having some screws taken out of his old knee, so he's looking a bit sus for round one as well. And then you've also got Chincotta, who's out for half the season as well. So some pretty decent names for Carlton missing to start the season.
That's at least 3.5 best 22 players. The half is for Smith, just whether you put a rookie into the best 22 of Carlton side. I think you could certainly make the case for that. But I think Chincotta's earned his spot in that best 22. Newman's a huge blow for Carlton, especially given Carlton have had difficulties with injuries in that midfield. Talk about Chera, talk about Hewitt. Walsh has had his injury problems as well. It's been so often Paddy Cripps versus the world, and it was starting to look like that may not be the case in 2025, but it's been a cruel preseason for Carlton. Curnow, this is a really interesting fork in the road for Charlie Curnow because he's had his best run with injuries, and it's coincided with, by far and away, his best run of form in his career. This is the first real blip on that radar since Curnow got over his injury concerns. So what happens from here is going to be really interesting. Does he take a bit longer to recover? Does he come back and immediately have that same impact? And this is just Charlie Curnow now. He's really good. Or does he then start getting into this slippery slope and this downward spiral almost of injury problems that he did have for significant parts of his career?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch, I think, this year, Charlie, because obviously he's a gun. And he changes games, kind of puts the team on his back a lot of the time. So without him, and also without Newman, it's going to be an interesting little start to the season for Carlton. I think they need to get a pretty strong start this year because I think a lot of Carlton fans we'll get into it in more detail next week, but they're probably they're hungry, they're thirsty for a bit of success down on Lygon Street. Expectations are high. Let's move on to Collingwood, who actually got away relatively unscathed. Tom Mitchell being the only notable out for an extended period. Everyone else seems to be just going to be fine for opening round. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty good for Collingwood. Scary.
Good result.
That's good.
And I don't think Mitchell's immediately a walk-in best 22 this season either, just with the way he's been going in recent years. I still think he's a very good player and he can impact games, but if you offered me a chance to, I guess, sacrifice a best 23 player for Collingwood for an extended period of time, I don't think Mitchell would be far off the top of that list for me personally. So never nice to have players injured. Obviously, I'm not advocating for that, but I think all in all for Collingwood, not a bad result.
Not a bad result at all. Moving on to the Essendon Bombers. Guelphy with a hamstring, see him out for half the year. And then just seems to be a lot of other little tiny niggling injuries. But nothing really else to talk about in terms other than Darcy Parish being maybe out for opening round, but that's neither here nor there. Lots of teams have opening round people missing. So I think that's actually pretty good for the Bombers as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yep, broadly unscathed. Guelph is a handy player, but we may get to see more of Isaac Kako with him as a result, and that's exactly what we want. So bring in that very exciting small man.
Dogs go back for Kako. All right, Fremantle, here we go. Darcy, obviously a big fella.
Hey, Lam, I've got a joke for you.
Go on.
How do you know Sean Darcy's injured?
How?
The day ends in Y. Who else is injured?
Fifey doubtful for round one. Alex Pearce, fine. Switter's got a concussion. That's an interesting one for me, though, because Switter's had a few concussion issues as of late, and they seem to be kind of compounding, much like someone we'll get to with the Giants, who I've mentioned earlier in the show anyway, who little knocks now seem to be sending them out for an extended period of time. It is a concern. Obviously, Switter got that in the All-Star game. Really, the only real kind of concern coming out of that game, and I watched it like this the entire time, eyes through my hands, because I didn't want anyone to get injured, be that on playing for you don't want to see anyone get injured in a game like that, that's for sure. I think Braden Walker may have broken his nose, but he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. Wearing those really cool masks.
Yeah, hell yeah. Like, I was supposed to like Horace Grant, but he actually just wore glasses. Richard
Hamilton did it for ages at the Pistons.
Oh yeah.
That's what I always think of when I think of like the mask. He wore it for years, and it was very cool.
They do look cool. Cody Rhodes used to wear it too. Michael Walters, no, he's fine. So realistically, it's only Sean Darcy for Freo that is the main kind of concern. But we should have Reedy coming through and getting some time at the start, which would be good. I've lost your sound, Jesse. Where's your sound gone?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can now. You got to talk about Freo. You can't go quiet on that.
I thought I'd save you and the listeners a bit of bother. Funnily enough, I was actually making a joke which no one gets to hear because I was on mute. I think, in all seriousness, Fife missing round one, what a great opportunity to see what Fremantle can do without Nat Fife. What a fantastic opportunity. Yep. Murphy Reid has killed it in the preseason. I still stand by my questioning of the recruitment decision because ultimately I feel like you can't play him over Erasmus Like I know he's been really good, and I don't want to hear it. I know he's been really good, but physically, he's not ready for AFL. Not for a club that's going to be or is meant to be top 8, top 4, that kind of bracket. I don't think anyway. Let him learn his craft at Peel. He might turn out to be quite a good player. Switter,
it is nice, though.
It is.
It is nice to have the, like, for Raz to have that someone burning underneath his feet to make him, pick up his game a little bit. Be nice.
Well, I think it gives us actual options to look at what our best midfield is. There's players like O'Driscoll who I think can rotate to the middle. For whatever reason, Aish is out in the cold now and doesn't seem to be a part of the plans, which I still don't really get, to be honest. I know he's not in your first 5 names in the team sheet, but gee, to me, you've got 3-4 different positions he can play. You got to have a player like that in the team. You have something to say.
Let's not get too carried away with talking about Freo, though. We've got more teams to get through.
I'll talk about Darcy. He's injured again.
Yes, talk about Darcy. That's fine. We'll get into Freo's. We'll get into Freo's season proper when we do the look ahead next week. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Geelong, unfortunately, are basically fine. We don't need this. Cam Guthrie out with an Achilles early season. Actually, on that side note, we're about to go through a lot of Achilles injuries in the teams coming up. I don't know what was happening in this offseason, but Achilles were popping out left, right, and centre. But Geelong, literally a clean bill of health outside of Cam Guthrie, which is not what any of the competition needs.
I would tend to agree.
Yes, no, I thought you might.
I mean, Geelong fans are going to be up and about. The rest of us who have had Geelong be good for 20 years are going to say,
oh.
Again, never want injuries, but the thought of another good Geelong year, I think, is great in many ways, but it'd be nice if it's not them again.
Hey, you never know. Stranger things have happened. Like the following team making the finals for once. Gold Coast Suns, new jersey, new logo, new attitude. Jesse, you ready for it?
Same airport.
He loves the airport. Bring on Coolangatta. And did they change their song at the end? I think there was talk about it, but they didn't. No, that's a shame. No issues really. Rioli working back from an MCL surgery in the off-season, but should be okay for round 1. Other than that, yeah, they're looking pretty good as well injury-wise. Good on you, Gold Coast Suns. Now we move on to the Giants. Tom Green, calf injury, keep him out for at least the first part of the season. That's pretty big. Sam Taylor, another concussion concern. We've already discussed how this could be, like Switter, a mounting problem for the young fella, which you don't like to see because he's a gun. Callum Brown missed the start of the season, and then the suspensions from the end-of-year shenanigans from last year will also kick off. Not an injury, but fun to talk about. Jesse, your thoughts on the GWS injuries at the moment?
Yeah, this isn't the start they wanted. Real concerns, I think, with Taylor specifically. Obviously, Tom Green, an elite player, potential to be a top 5-10 midfielder in the competition, I think, this season. Had he not gone in with injury, he still may well go and do that, but I think this is a problem for the Giants. They're a club and obviously we'll talk about this more next week, but a club I'm very much flip-floppy on for season 2025, and I don't know if this is going to be a great way for them to start their campaign. So I think the start of their season is not all that easy off the top of my head. So we'll have to see how that plays out. We'll talk about that more next week. But yeah, Taylor and Green, well, certainly Green and potentially Taylor out for a while as well, is a bit of a worry.
It is. It's GWS in a nutshell, really. Who knows what they're going to give you? Who knows? Moving on to the Hawks. Fun, Hawthorn win. Fun, Hawthorn Hawks. Mitchell Lewis is working back from an ACL. Kashadir is being managed with a bit of a bone stress injury. Otherwise, fine. Otherwise, clean. You'd like to hear that? Do you reckon anything of concern for the Hawks there?
No, I think that's fine. I mean, Deer had a big season for such a young player last year. I'm not surprised that he's still growing into his frame and his frame's growing into the sport. So I don't think any massive concerns at this point for the Hawks based off that.
Melbourne's injury list is long. It's extensive. But we'll try and go through just the main one. Shane McAdams ruptured his Achilles. There it is. Likely to be a season-long injury, unfortunately. The Achilles, when you do it properly, it takes a fair bit to come back from.
It's a big Achilles.
It's a big Achilles. What else we got here? Most of the other ones are okay for preseason though. You've got like most of the team basically listed on the injury report for at least the first round or two. That's not even like Jack Viney, Spargo, Cosy Pickett, but he's suspended. Melksham, McVee, bloody Petraka, Chandler.
The tea
May I
lady.
go on? The tea lady, which is a damn shame. It's a damn shame. It's the heart and soul of the team.
Love a good Dilmar.
I'll sing the song in my head and probably out loud. You know what I'm like. Melbourne, thoughts? Did you give them already? I can't remember.
No, I haven't. But it screams of trouble. It screams of trouble for Melbourne. Spoiler alert for next week. Rather, I've got them in bottom 4 for season 2025. I think we're set for a real meltdown here from the D's, and this is not the injury list you'd want going into the season where expectations are probably through the floor. Certainly externally, in terms of where they are, they don't really seem to have a lot of fresh blood or the ability to regenerate that list. Guys like Lever, May. They're not getting any younger. Oliver, Petrarca as well. All those players I've just mentioned are fantastic players, but they're not. They're in that kind of age profile now where you've seen the absolute peak of them, in my view. Maybe Petrarca's got another year or two left at that zenith of the comp, but he's coming off a pretty traumatic injury and not insignificant amount of rumours about him being unhappy with the football club. Those things don't often come out of thin air to that degree. So a bit to watch here. I would not be particularly looking forward to the first game or two if I was a D supporter, never mind the rest of the season.
Yeah, hard to disagree with that. Moving on to the other Melbourne, the North variety. A couple of big names here. Callum Coleman-Jones. What's he done, Jesse? Can you have a guess?
He's big. He's a big boy, and he's got a long name, so I see where you come from. He's a big name.
He's done his Achilles, hasn't he?
Oh, he's only gone and done it.
He's only got done his Achilles. Not a season-long one. It'll keep him out to about mid-season. And then Wardlaw, which is copped a nasty hammy that will keep him out quite a while. So a couple of their good young guns there going down, which is a bit of a shame.
It is. Hopefully, if there's going to be a silver lining, hopefully we get to see a bit of Finn O'Sullivan nice and early in the season. And I loved his aggression going straight at Clayton Oliver in the North Melbourne practice game not that long ago. So I loved that from him.
Very good.
Having a bit of crack.
I don't reckon Clayton's going to go this year, by the way. Just a really cheeky sidebar.
As a preview for next week, badly.
Okay.
You don't go through the last 2 seasons you've had and go and smash it out 35 disposals a game unless you're a genuine generational freak, and there's only one that I've seen in my lifetime, and he played for the other West Australian team, and I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together on whom I'm talking about there.
I can indeed. Who was up to? Port Adelaide. Todd Marshall. What's he done?
Achilles,
yes, he has. That's a big one. That's a season most likely for Todd. Unless
that's the second one.
That's the second one. But I caught that one, Jesse, before you.
No,
I caught that one.
That's how it works, mate. You can't knock someone out of the box and say, I knew it was going to be a penalty before you did, Jesse, ref. So I'm off the hook.
Jesse, the amount of times I've got like halfway through saying the next part of the sentence and you're like, sorry, what was that? Oh, what was that? I'm proud of myself. I caught myself before you got a chance to do that. I will take it. 2025.
I'll get you next time. My fingers.
Yeah, I know. You'll be on the pulse. You'll be right onto it next time. Todd Marshall. A bit of a shame for him, actually, because he kind of needed to prove something this year a little bit because he had a pretty terrible 2024. And now he's not going to get a chance to do it. Hey, maybe this is a silver lining. We don't like to see injuries, like you said, but maybe this is like a good old massive refresh from the get-go for Todd. Get himself right, up and down, come out in 2026 and start firing. And then outside of that, though, Port Adelaide aren't looking too terrible. Maybe Asava is to be confirmed. No time for him or Brandon Cirque Thatcher with their injuries as of now, both a knee and a back, respectively. Your thoughts on Port?
I do think Cirque Thatcher is going to be a miss for them. I don't think we saw the best of him last season, first year across at the footy club, having moved from Essendon, but that's not to say that we won't. And I think there's a good enough player in there that he has the ability to impact for Port when he does return. So that's a bit of a shame. Obviously, Todd Marshall, for the fact that he didn't have a great year last year, he does carry a sense of importance to that Port Adelaide forward structure. We saw them have to really dig into their squad last year to bring out some forwards at times, with Charlie Dixon being in and out of form as well. Georgiades, I think, missed time last year too. So they have had to dig into that squad previously. That may have to happen again in season 2025.
We went to Richmond, number 1 pick, Sam Layla. Do you know what's funny? My notes, it's auto-corrected. It says Sam Labour, which is not correct, which is why I started on that one, Jess. You want to count that one as well? Chalk that one? We're chalking that one up as well?
Because that's AI and can't help.
No, I typed it. No, I know what you mean. Is it Layla or Lawler? How do they say it?
Layla.
Layla.
Actually, I'm going to give you one because you really should know what the first name that I'm on draft pick is. So now you're on 3.
Fair enough.
You got no one to blame but yourself.
That's fine.
I don't make the rules, I just enforce them.
You are the enforcer. Pocket-sized enforcer. Sam Layla will be out for at least start of the season after breaking his jaw in the preseason match with the Eagles. Presti and Ralph Smith, 2 of many, working their way back into match fitness to start this season. And then obviously Bolter, which is autocorrected to Malta on my thing here. Noah Malta is out to round 5 with his off-season shenanigans as well. All in all, I mean, the list is longer than that, but most of them are early season returns. Probably not a bad place to be for a young upstart team like Richmond.
No, they're probably going to lose a lot this year. And that's not meant to be said to be nasty. It's just where they are. I don't think many Richmond fans would disagree with that. And I guess the advantage of having these guys, well, let's be honest, Prestia has not worked out for Richmond, I don't feel. Richmond fans are welcome to come and disagree with me if they do genuinely feel like he has worked out for them. It's not like Tom Lynch where, yeah, he's injured a lot, but gee, when he's on, he's on. Mm-hmm. It just hasn't really worked out. So I think, honestly, getting the opportunity to blood some of the procession of first and second round draft picks they've got at the moment, I don't think that's a bad thing. No. Yeah, they're probably going to lose. At least they get to lose by getting some experience and some experience into the legs of the younger players in their side now.
I reckon some of the X factor of just running out those kids is going to throw a lot of teams off. They might get a few under their belt. We'll see. St Kilda, one stage, King, Sinclair, Mason Wood, all in the news, basically all at the same time, all with potentially serious injuries, and it turns out they're all just chill. They're fine. So nothing really major from those guys, which is good for them. Alex Toru, new recruit, will be out around mid-season with a back injury. And then Philippou and Dougal Howard, both mid-season returns from their injuries. Have I missed anybody? Let's have a quick look. I don't believe so. Because Max King's going to be round 1, Rowan Marshall round 1. No one's really set to miss a good slate of time. Philippou, he's at mid-season.
Howard, Toru, Philippou are probably 3 best 22 Saints players in 2025. I think Toru would have gotten into that best 22 or 23 straight away. Dougal Howard plays a very important role, especially with Josh Battle not being at the club anymore. And Philippou at times, especially in that latter part of the season when the Saints started winning and he had just come back into that team, looked really dangerous. This isn't great for them. They dodged a bullet with King, Wood, Sinclair all being fine. That's a win for them. They need that. Max needs the opportunity now to disprove the narrative that the Saints are better without him, and he gets that now in the early season, especially with Tim Membry no longer at the club too. It really is all on Max. So losing Max would have been a critical blow to the Saints season. And I don't think it's a secret that I don't particularly rate Max King, but ultimately they've set their forward structure up around him. He needs to be on the park for St Kilda in the season, and he is going to be now in round 1. That's a good result. Philippou, I think that's a big loss for them. Dougal Howard, underrated. I know it's always difficult with these stoic, resilient defenders that they just do their jobs. They make mistakes sometimes. It's really easy to pounce on them because, he's made a mistake. A little bit in that kind of Zach Dawson effect mold. Like, yeah, it's really easy to make fun of them when they stuff up because it always looks really funny. And it usually leads to a goal because it's just where they are on the field. But ultimately, best 22 player and a handy player. And Toru, obviously, as well. Certainly, in my view, I had him getting some of that game time early on. I think you wouldn't have taken the risk on him because, remember, he was a huge bolter in that draft. Not a Noah, a draft. He was a draft bolter in 2024 and really a player that St Kilda fans should be excited about in the future. unfortunately won't be there for round 1.
Bit of shame. All right, let's move on to Sydney. Not too much. Again, a lot of just preseason injuries, so nothing too big to write home about. Logan McDonald still recovering from ankle injury, which is apparently not healing as fast as they were expecting. So no real timeline for his return.
That's the same injury from the grand final, isn't it?
I believe so.
What a bad decision to play him.
I know it was, right?
I don't think that's a controversial statement either. He clearly was not fit from within the first 5 minutes. I understand. I understand the why. I don't agree with it, but I understand the why in terms of why he played. And I know you can't tell the future, and he could have kicked the winning goal, but then he sprayed that kick against Fremantle in the season, so it wouldn't have been him kicking the winning goal. It just seemed like a big blow, and for a side that currently has a season-long bruised ego on their injury list, I'm not really sure that that's what they want either, losing some of their best players from the word go.
No, true. Thankfully, the rest of them are pretty minor, but no, point taken. Let's move on to West Coast. Dom Sheed ruptured his ACL at training. Could that be the end of his career, Jesse?
I think it has to be. And I think I had this conversation recently. Dom Sheed will retire as a moments player. That's not to say he was a bad player. He has been a very good player for West Coast.
One of those moments is pretty epic.
But that's what I'm saying. There are some players that retire on the basis of their consistency, their absolute top level ability, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. There are some players that retire with the legacy of a moment. And I think Dom Sheed will always be remembered for that goal. You know, for him, for a boy from Kalgoorlie to steal himself in front of 100,000 people in an almost impossible angle in the last quarter of a grand final and slot that like it was never in doubt is one of the all-time moments in Australian rules football. Make numbers, and I can say that comfortably as a Fremantle supporter, one of the all-time moments. But it's fairly clear that form that was getting him into best 22 is no longer there. He looked slow last season, and you see 22, 23-year-olds struggle off an ACL. I don't know how you're going to go with a 33, 34-year-old Dom Sheed. Next year, West Coast are now in the position where they're accelerating that rebuild quite nicely. I don't think he can be a part of that plan as good as that moment was.
Hard to disagree. And Elliot Yeo is out at the start of the season with an MCL ankle injury as well. But I don't think that's too long. He's listed as being early season, so opening rounds or so. Now we get to the team that I think has probably been hit the worst in the off-season with the best 22, and it's the Bulldogs. We left the worst till last. Waitman, out for 3 months after knee surgery. English, no timeline for his return after an abdominal injury. Timeline unclear for Norton, who's done a calf, and obviously Jamara, who's out with personal concerns. Treloar out for the start of the season with a calf. Johannes and Liam Jones both out for considerable time with hammies. Like, that's a good old chunk of your best 22 right there.
If anyone needed SSP, it wasn't Carlton.
Yeah, it wasn't Carlton. It was the old poor bullies. Goodness me.
Oh dear, that's a lot of good players.
Yeah.
That's so many good players. Yeah, look, I don't know how to sugarcoat that, unfortunately, Bulldogs fans. That is a tough hand to be dealt at the start of a season. Never mind in round 12, round 13, when you've got full match fitness across most of your squad, apart from injured players. You've now got a team starting with limited match fitness, as is everyone in round 0/1, that have now got to try and build it up without significant chunks of your players. I think to an extent, the Dogs also are having this problem that Melbourne have with a lot of these key players now are aging out. Liberatore's hit his peak. Bontempelli has arguably hit his peak. So they're not going to get a lot of natural improvement. They didn't have Bailey Smith last year, but Bailey Smith coming back in would have been a significant shot in the arm had he not gone down the Princes Highway to Geelong. So some big, big concerns here for the Dogs. I guess the big issue for them is how disruptive is it? If it's a couple of weeks, that's an easy recovery. Get on with it, dust yourselves off on the way to finals. That's fine. But if some of these injuries turn from 2 weeks to 4 weeks and you start to see limited forward presence from some of the main names in the Dogs, this could really turn into a problem for them. And we've seen it before, clubs firing home late in the season, just missing out because they just gave up too many points at the start of the season.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. We got a little bit of a tidbit into what we think is going to happen with some of these teams. We'll go into it in more detail next week once we've had a quick look at the preseason matches that are happening as of tomorrow, at time of recording. Tuesday, there's the first preseason game. Geelong and Essendon, I think. Geelong and somebody are playing tomorrow. So we'll have a better indication of where teams are kind of sitting and where they're looking. Did you want to talk about the Freo All-Star game, Jesse? No?
We can kick it on the way home as a way to do it. First of all, it was a really well-attended game. I didn't actually make it to the game, but I was on the public transport network in Perth during the build-up, running an errand or two, and I've got to say it was a really well-attended game, both in the stands and also people going. I loved seeing everyone wearing different Indigenous jerseys as well for each of the clubs. There was a huge range of clubs, some wearing the yellow kit, which is awesome as well. I think I saw Brisbane, Essendon, Freo, West Coast. I saw a fair few, Carlton as well. I definitely saw at least kind of 6 or 7 different clubs from being in the city for 40 minutes in the build up to the game. So it was really awesome to see that. Bit of talk now that Indigenous All-Stars is going to be added into the State of Origin mix if State of Origin was to be brought back. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And that's obviously up to the individual players in terms of, do they want to represent the amalgamation or their state? That's entirely their decision. We're not going to get involved in that. But that could create some issues potentially in that space. But for the one-off as what it was, that's a hard one to say, a fantastic game. I do have to say, though, I did feel a little bit personally insulted by being told that this game plan was unfreo-like or vanilla when it's pound for pound what we've been doing for the last 5 years. Being a Fremantle fan is like being constantly told that you're not crazy, but you feel like you're going crazy by being told, no, it's fine.
You're fine.
It's totally fine. But I feel like I'm going down the deep end a little bit. Like, from what I saw, that's exactly what we've been doing for 5 years, except Giannis was a fullback sometimes. Like, that's not...
Yeah, that was weird.
Hugely different. But look, it's a preseason game. I don't want to get too up in arms about that, but I will say I did have some questions about the narrative that was being spun coming out of that game.
Yeah, and I said to you afterwards, I was just like, after we were talking about that exact narrative, I said, you watch round 1, we'll play that exact brand of football. And then everyone will be like, oh, I thought you were playing the vanilla style of football. No, maybe that's just how it goes. But no, I agree with you. It was a fun game to watch. The Indigenous All-Stars played their hearts out for each other, which is really nice to see. Freo were also there. And that was what it was for. The big old photo with all of them arm in arm at the end. That was really nice to see. They had to do it again because Jai Simpkin was too busy talking up a storm to Cat. But they did it again, and it was just nice. It was just a nice spectacle. And no real injuries out of it, which is what we wanted to see. Outside of Switter, I enjoyed it. It was fun. What more do you want? What more do you want?
I'll tell you something on the way out before we go.
Okay.
And they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it, but I think they really should. I would love to see the Indigenous All-Stars represent Australia in international rules. I know international rules is dead.
Oh.
I don't want to hear it. Let them do it. I think that'd be awesome. And I would pay good money to watch that because we know how quick and talented and mobile the best of Gaelic football is. I think quick and talented and mobile, it describes many of the players in the Indigenous All-Stars team. They weren't a tall team. I think that'd be a really great matchup between the best of the GAA and the best of the AFL's rich Indigenous players that we currently have at the moment.
Jesse, I do not hate that idea at all. Well, it's good to be back, mate. We've done it again. We've waffled on for an hour, which is what we usually do. Excited to get back into it. Excited to get into the season proper. How'd you feel about it? How'd you feel about being back?
Well, if I wasn't in my little cubby hole in my office, I'd be even more happier because this hour has probably done untold damage to my back from hunching forward to do that. But that's okay. All for the content and the listeners and the viewers. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. Make sure you tune in next week for our pre-season preview of all 18 sides and our very special round zero, if you count round zero, episode of Just the Tips. I'm Jesse. That's Liam. We'll see you next time on the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast.
Bye, everybody.